another expert in constitutional law with us, Professor Dr. S. Sachidanandam, who is a senior professor at National Law University, Odisha. As the chief guest of our event, we will be shortly joined by Honorable Justice Mr. Sanjeev Kumar Panigrahi, who is currently the sitting judge of Odisha High Court. He was formerly the practicing advocate for the Supreme Court of India, the High Court of Odisha, and also High Court of Delhi. He was also the advocate of record for the Supreme Court of India. He has been a pass out of National Law School, Bangalore, and has expertise in the area of constitutional law, environmental law, commercial law, civil law, and many other such subjects. In the panel, we also have with us Dr. Professor Aruna Sri Lakshmi, who is the chairman of academic coordination at National Law University, Odisha. As the organizer of this event, we have Dr. Owais Hassan Khan, who is assistant professor at National Law University, Odisha. And I will be moderating this event. I am Rishika Khare, assistant professor of law, National Law University, Odisha. And in the participants, we have multiple teachers from amongst the schools from Cuttack and Bhubaneswar. And apart from that, we also have a few students from National Law University, Odisha joining us. For today's event, the format will be that we will have address delivered by dignitaries, followed by a 10-minute reservation for question and answers, for which, in case a participant has a question, I request them to write their name in the chat box or mention their question in the chat box, and thereafter I will call you one by one to raise your question. And if you have any specific dignitary to whom you want to address the question, please mention that also so that they can reply in specific. So, and also I request everybody to kindly keep your mics on mute so that there is no noise disturbance while the addresses are being delivered. So to start with the event, I now call upon Dr. Owais Hassan Khan, who will introduce to us the event, and then we will take this event forward. Over to you.
Thank you, Rishika ma'am. Thank you, Rishika ma'am, and good afternoon again to all of you, and welcome to this teachers training program. So I will briefly introduce what exactly is the objective of today's training program, and per se, what is the objective of the constitutional year-long celebration. And this is the first time which is happening in India that we are going for a year-long celebration. Earlier, we used to have 26th November as the Law Day, which was celebrated for a day only. So in 2015, the government of India decided to celebrate 26th November as a Constitution Day. So earlier we used to call it as a Law Day. Now we call it as a Constitutional Day.
Sir, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We have, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Honorable Justice Sanjeev Panigrahi has joined us. A very warm welcome to you, sir. I think sir is here.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I'm extremely sorry for the delay.
It's absolutely fine, sir. No problem.
Basically, I came to Delhi, so I was traveling, so it got delayed.
All right, sir. So I have welcomed everybody, and now we have Dr. Owais Hassan Khan, who is introducing to us what the event is about. So we'll start from there, sir.
Honorable Justice Sanjeev Panigrahi, welcome you, sir, to the training program, and thank you for gracing the occasion. Sir, I was introducing what exactly is this Constitution Day celebration to all the teachers, all the participants, our colleague, in fact, from the schools. So I tell them about the background to this Constitution Day celebration. In 2015, as I was discussing, in 2015, the government of India decided to celebrate 26th November as a Constitution Day, the Samvidhan Divas. Earlier, we used to call it as a Law Day. And in 2019, the UGC and the Ministry of Education, earlier called us as a MHRD, decided to go for a year-long Constitutional Day celebration. So this is the first time it is happening in India that we are having a celebration, which is a year-long celebration. And the whole idea of this year-long celebration is to make Indian Constitution reach to the Indian citizenry, that each and every citizenry of India is aware about the constitutional principles of integrity, of unity, of diversity, of social, political, and economic equality. And with the same intention, the UGC and Ministry of Education, now Ministry of Education, earlier MHRD, and the Department of Justice, Government of India decided to go for different kind of activities throughout the years. And purpose of all these activities was to make Indian Constitution reach to this to the Indian citizenry, because Indian Constitution is our grand norm. It is the basis of our all laws, and that's the reason, the foundation of our laws. It was decided that we will go for a year-long celebration. So the idea of a teachers training program was conceived by our earlier Vice Chancellor and our present Vice Chancellor. Together, they conceived the idea for going for a teachers training program, because this is one of the best way to reach to the school children. Because these school children, they are the future of our nation, and they are at the very formative stage. So if we tell them, so that's the whole purpose of today's training program. Today's training program will not end at 4:30. So it will go on for the rest of your academic career also. And it would be responsibility of us as a teacher to take the lessons of the Constitution to our students in the classroom, particularly. And that's the reason this year we thought of starting with the theme of Kartavya. So we have year-long Constitution Day celebration, but this year it is about Kartavya, the fundamental duties. So we'll teach our students the importance of fundamental duties and how important fundamental duties is in the nation building, and that's the theme of our presentation. And it is also in consonance with the Indian culture, which transcends religious lines, the idea of a dharma. So if we read the definition of a dharma, you will find that the discussion of a right, duties are first. So even the dharma will talk about duties first, and we'll talk about rights later. Because if everybody takes care of their duties, the right is automatically taken care of. So if I have a right to life and personal liberty, so everyone who's around me respect my physical integrity, then my right of life and personal liberty is automatically taken care of. And that's the importance which we have about fundamental duties. So this year-long Constitution Day celebration is about fundamental duties. And this training program is also about fundamental duties. And we are privileged enough, we were honored by the UGC and Ministry of Education, the National Law University. We were made as a state coordinator, Odisha state coordinating university for the year-long celebration, and we are doing the same thing. But because of the coronavirus, the whole pandemic, we were not being able to execute it properly. There were many things which we have planned on campus physically to outreach to the whole community in Odisha, but we were not being able to do. And this is a small attempt we are going to make through online webinars and other things that we can do. So this is it, about very small introduction about what is the intention of the Government of India, UGC, Ministry of Education with this training program and what objective we are carrying with this training program. So thank you so much for your time. Over to Rishika, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Vishnu. We now move on to Vice Chancellor of National Law University, Dr. Professor Yogesh Pratap Singh, to kindly deliver the inaugural address. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Rishika. Thank you, Dr. Oves, for briefly giving the objective of this training program. Honorable Justice Sanjeev Kumar Panigrahi, Judge, Odisha High Court, Professor S. Sachidanandam, Senior Professor of Constitutional Law and former Vice Chancellor, Dr. Ambedkar Law University, Chennai, Professor Aruna Shri Lakshmi, Chairman, Academic Coordination Committee, National Law University, Odisha, my colleagues, Dr. Oves Hassan Khan and Rishika Khare, Assistant Professors of Law at National Law University, Odisha, learned and respected teachers of various schools of Odisha, Cuttack and Bhubaneswar, other participants, students, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome on behalf of National Law University, Odisha, I welcome all of you to this training program, which is being organized by the Law University in furtherance of this year-long celebration of Constitution Day. Dr. Oves has already given you the objective, the background of the program, so I will not repeat it again. I can briefly tell you the objective with which the National Law University Odisha was established in 2009. And within the span of short 10 years, we have established us as a center of excellence. In the last 3 years, various agencies have rated National Law University Odisha, given very high rank, maybe third or fourth amongst all the law universities of the country, law colleges of the country. University Grants Commission and Ministry of Education, earlier Ministry of Resource Development, recognize universities' potential and capabilities and recognized this university as a center of excellence in legal education and conferred on the university graded autonomy. And we were among the 4 law universities who were given this privilege by the UGC. Recently, in 2020, NIRF, the National Institution Framework Ranking, again, university was ranked 9th amongst all the national law universities and 14th amongst overall categories of law colleges, universities, and institutions of legal education in the whole country. So we are constantly engaged in dissemination of knowledge, promoting knowledge-based, creating awareness among the society. So teaching is not the only objective of National Law University Odisha. Dissemination of knowledge and dissemination of other and empowerment of the whole citizenry is the objective, one of the objectives of National Law University Odisha. And in furtherance of this objective, the Government of India and Ministry of Education, UGC, has given us this task that we will coordinate and we will organize programs so that this year-long celebration of Constitution Day, we can celebrate and we can train people who require this kind of training. And I think teachers training program, I personally feel that teachers have bigger responsibility, and school teachers have even in comparison to university teachers or college teachers, school teachers have more responsibility, and that's why this program has been organized. Oves rightly mentioned that we are a society, or we were a society based on duties. So it was a duty-oriented society because we used to hear the phrases like karmanyeva adhikaraste ma phalesu kadachana. The meaning is you have a right only to do your karma. You have right only to perform your duty. So we talk about our duties not right. If we perform our duty, I think everybody, rights are rights in our system. We have fundamental rights, human rights, because we are a human being. These rights are not given by the Constitution. These rights are not given by the law. These rights we have by virtue of being a human being. Constitution has guaranteed that a state will not violate, a state will not dilute, a state will not abridge or limit these fundamental rights or human rights. And that's why we call it negative rights. So if we follow our duty, I think everybody will exercise their rights. And this was one of the very first principle which common law discussed, common law discovered. We teach in the very first semester, there is a principle in law of tort. We teach in first semester law student. And this Latin principle says, sic utere tuo ut in aliens non-leaders. Always, I think, indirectly referred this principle that one should use his right and property in such a way that it will not interfere with the rights and property of somebody else's. Or in simple terms, we can say that your right ends where my nose begins. This was one of the oldest principles which common law, English law discovered, and they applied. But we don't emphasize more on these principles. We don't emphasize on duty part, rather we emphasize more on right. Maybe because of the background in which the constitution was drafted, and the past, because we suffered a lot during British regime, British rule, and that's why people were more emphasizing on rights, that the state should not violate, or the state should ensure that everybody is getting their due, their rights, which are very fundamental to the human dignity and human rights. So we started emphasizing more on fundamental rights, not on duty. Everybody is talking about fundamental rights, and Constitution also recognized in Part 3 of the Constitution certain fundamental rights which are judicially enforceable. This is one of the very unique features of Indian Constitution, that if your fundamental right is violated, you can directly approach Supreme Court and High Court. And the High Court and Supreme Court is under obligation to ensure that you get remedy. This kind of arrangement we will not find in any other progressive constitution. So drafters of the constitution, right from the beginning, they were very clear. Maybe because of that, that's why I said that, because of the recent past background. So we started emphasizing more on fundamental rights and the duty of the state to not to violate these fundamental rights, and duty of the state to create a political environment, to create a social environment where every citizen can exercise freely their fundamental rights without any problem, without any hindrance. But slowly, we realized that fundamental rights are not the only thing. And then Constitution, 1978 Constitution was amended, and we included a set of fundamental duties in the Constitution. Initially, 10 duties were added, and later it was further amended, and one more fundamental duty was incorporated in the Constitution. Though these are not judicially enforceable, means like fundamental rights. If your fundamental right is violated, you can directly approach High Court and Supreme Court. Approaching Supreme Court itself is a fundamental right for violation of fundamental right. But in case of fundamental duties, if a citizen is not performing the fundamental duties enumerated in the Constitution, Article 51A, then you cannot approach court that he should, or it should be judicially enforceable. High Court and Supreme Court will not cannot force a citizen to, and that's why this is a kind of, people say that moral obligation on the part of citizens, on the part of people of this country. But this is not, this is much more than moral obligation. It may not be judicially enforceable, but some of the fundamental duties you will find has been part of statutory laws. So there has been some mechanism in statutes, in various other acts, by which the state will ensure that every citizen is performing their fundamental duty. For example, the first duty which Constitution enumerates is to abide by the Constitution and respect the ideals and institutions, the national flag and national anthem. So every citizen has to abide by the ideals of the Constitution, equality, justice, fraternity, the ideals which you will find in the preamble of the Constitution. And you have to respect those ideals. National anthem, national flag. And to ensure this, we have a Prevention of Insult to National Honors Act 1971. We have Emblems and Names Prevention of Improper Use Act 1950, which was enacted immediately after the independence. So some part of these ideals, there has been a specific law, and it is not only a fundamental duty, it is legal duty also, and you have to follow. And if you don't follow, then you may be prosecuted or you may be penalized. But other like to respect the ideals of the Constitution. For this, there is no specific law. But law is not everything. Sanction and punishment and penalty is not the only method of implementing law. Making people aware, making people aware that he has to follow. This is required on their part. This is also a method. Convincing people, creating a culture, creating an environment where people respect the right of others. This is, I think, more important, and this training program is one of the reason for why we are organizing this kind of programs. The second objective, second fundamental duty which Constitution has mentioned, to cherish and follow the noble ideas which inspired our national struggle for freedom. To cherish and follow the noble ideals which inspired the national struggle. What are these ideas? Freedom, equality, non-violence, brotherhood, and peace. These are the ideas which inspired the drafters of the Constitution, the people who fought for our freedom, to uphold and protect the sovereignty, unity and integrity of India. Sovereignty, unity and integrity of this country is the most important thing. And we should respect and we should try to protect these. We should not, and there are laws also. If you are engaged, if you are indulged in any activity which may disturb the sovereignty or unity and integrity of this country, you may be punished and you may be held responsible. To defend the country and render national service whenever it is required. So this is another fundamental duty, that you have to defend your country if it is required, if there is an emergency. And you have to render national service whenever it is called upon to do so. To promote harmony and the spirit of common brotherhood amongst all the people of India, transcending religious, linguistic, and regional and sectional diversity. All of you must be aware. I need not to emphasize that how diverse our country is. And one of the biggest characteristic of this country was, this federation was, that we wanted to achieve unity in diversity, and that's why we adopted this federal system, where we can protect various languages, we can protect various culture, we can protect various religious groups. And the Constitution has given freedom to all the people, all the religions, all the cultural sects to profess their religion, to promote their religion, without disturbing any other's religion, without disturbing any other's feeling. And I think this is the most important in today's time. If we can promote this common brotherhood, that will be, I think, the biggest contribution. And the government, I think, has taken a right step by deciding that this whole year we will celebrate and we will emphasize not on the rights we have talked enough. We will emphasize more on fundamental duties. I think that is a correct decision which the government has taken. There are many laws which provides that you will not disturb this common brotherhood. You will not interfere in any activity which may disturb the peace in the society. We have various laws. Indian Penal Code is the general penal law. We have Protection of Civil Rights Act 1955. We have Representation of People's Act, which bars politicians to do campaigning in the name of religion, to do campaigning. In spite of all these things, it happens. It happens. And there comes the implementation of law, weakness of the implementation of the law. So we have a legal system, we have a legal mechanism, but it has not been properly executed, implemented, and that's why people indulge in all these activities, and they do. To value and preserve the rich heritage of our composite culture. This is another fundamental duty which Constitution has outlined. I mentioned that we have so much of diversity, and this country, we must celebrate our diversity. We must celebrate our diversity. To protect and improve the natural environment, including forests, lakes, rivers, and wildlife, and to have compassion for living creatures. This is another fundamental duty on every citizen, that we should protect our environment, forest, lakes. To develop the scientific temper and humanism and the spirit of inquiry. This is also, I think, very, very crucial, very important. To develop the scientific temper. I have seen people who have studied science and technology, they have achieved so much. But if you see the practice, they don't want to develop scientific temper. They still believe in old, spiritual, illogical things, which has no logic, which has no basis. Constitution has given you right to freedom, freedom of religion, freedom to profess any religion. But Constitution also mentioned that you develop scientific temper. Don't follow illogical, irrational things. You should ask questions. Why this is so? So if any religious group, any religious people, they are propagating something which appears to be illogical, you should ask question why this is so. And we teach in our university, we ask a student to question. We promote that a student, and right from the beginning they ask question. So don't follow anything without applying your mind. This is the objective. You raise the question, you find out the reasons why this is being practiced, what is the logic behind this, what is the rationale behind this. There are many old age practices which we are sati we followed for many years without applying his mind. There are many. Now government is slowly abolishing. Supreme Court is slowly declaring illegal, unconstitutional. Triple talaq is one such practice which was declared recently by Supreme Court unconstitutional. We followed it without applying his mind whether it is serving any purpose or not. It may be relevant at that point of time when it was started. It was justified. But whether it is justified now, that we should question, we should ask. To safeguard public property, not to indulge in any violence, to strive towards excellence in all spheres of individual and collective activity, so that the nation constantly rise to higher levels of endeavor and achievement. And finally, a new duty was incorporated by 86th Constitutional Amendment Act in the year 2002 on the recommendation of National Commission to review the working of the Constitution, that every parent and the guardian will have to provide the opportunity for education to his child, or as the case may be, what between the age of 6 to 14 years. So this is a duty of the parent, every parent and every guardian, that they have to provide, they have to ensure that the children is given proper education between 6 to 14 years. This is the latest fundamental duty which Constitution has imposed on every parent and every guardian. So this is briefly, we will hear from Justice Panigrahi also about fundamental duty and the significance. But briefly, these are the fundamental duties which we should sensitize people. We should inculcate all these ideals in the children from the school, right from the beginning. I think most of the problems of this country will be solved, and people will not fight for the implementation of their rights. So with these words, I welcome once again all the respected learned teachers of various schools of Cuttack and Bhubaneswar. I welcome Honorable Justice Panigrahi and other participants. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. We now move on to our second constitutional law expert, Professor Dr. Sachidanandam. He will be speaking on interface between rights and duties. Sachidanandam, sir, over to you now. Sir?
Sir, you have to unmute. Sachidanandam, sir, you have to. Yes, please, sir.
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Thank you. Honorable Justice Sanjeev Kumar Phanagiri, Judge High Court of Orissa, Dr. Yogesh Pratap Singh, Acting Vice Chancellor, Dr. Aruna K. Lakshmi, Dr. Bhavesh and Madam Rishika Gare, and respected learned teachers come from Cuttack and Orissa for this program. I am very happy to participate in this training program as part of the celebration of the the Constitution Day celebration. It is really a pity to involve the teachers and enlighten them so that they will carry to the students which they teach. Now, in my lecture, I am not going to list out the list of rights or the list of duties, which as a learner teachers you can refer to the list of rights or the list of duties as the case may be. But I want to make it known that the basis on which, the foundation on which the right duties are based, that this is a topic relating to the human relationship between individuals or between individual and the state. And historically and politically speaking, the origin of society and the origin of state. Of course, the monarch got a duty towards the subject, or what we call the Raj Dharma, to protect the life and liberty of the subject, a benevolent king. But at the same time, we have also seen in history the absolute monarchy, that subjects have only duty towards the state, monarch. He cannot have any right to state, the monarch. That is a matter of history. But there is a running conflict throughout our history. What we call in legal parlance, the positivism and naturalistic concept. Because these rights and duties are being conferred by law. Whatever may be your natural right or inherent right. Some sovereign states recognize it, some they don't recognize it. So this dilemma you find throughout our history, and still you find in some parts of the nation state. What they say, what they confer is the right. And in a dictatorial regime, you find the duty-oriented one. You cannot have any right. You can have such rights as are recognized by the sovereign state. So you have a running conflict throughout the history, what you call positivism and naturalism. That means, on the one hand, you find law is law, whether it is just or unjust. Whether it is just or unjust, law is law. That is what every dictator dictates. This is the law which you are to obey. You cannot have any right against the state. But there is, on the other hand, you find natural law doctrine, naturalism, that law must be just and reasonable. Law must be just, fair and reasonable. This is the other view. So this is a running conflict which we can't do it. Even now, we have witnessed it. Even in our own constitution, even in our own emergency time, we have got a well-known landmark decision that our own Supreme Court recognized the theory of positivism. Right from the A.K. Gopalan case, you have the theory of positivism. Whatever is made by the parliament, it is law. It was corrected in Maneka Gandhi. Similarly, in A.D.M. Jabalpur, during the emergency time, our own Supreme Court majority recognized it that whatever is done by the state is the law. So, since these rights and duties are derived from law made by the state, so at different points of time, even in a democratic state, you have got variation. Leave alone the authoritarian regime in like China or Germany under Hitler. So this you find like a pendulum swings from one period to another period. Now, to understand the basic of rights and duties, we have a very important subject which we teach our law students. Give you a very simple way of explaining this abstract concept. Now, rights and duties are mutually correlated. If I have what you call rights in the narrow, limited sense, and right in the broader, wider sense, there are two meanings for the word right. Right in a narrow, limited sense, that it is correlated with the duty. I have a right because you have a duty towards me. You have a right because I have a duty towards you. So mutually, in that sense, you have a rights and duties, we understand. But right, the word right has got broader, wider meaning. That is where it is not correlative, where it is there is no corresponding duty. That right in the broader, wider sense, we call it as liberty. Liberty. So you find in our own constitution, in Article 19(1)(a), 19(1)(a) gives you a list of rights from freedom of speech, etc. At the same time, you find in the very same Article 19(2) to 6 corresponding duties you have. So this is an example of rights and duties correlative. Now, if you take Article 21, you find the right on liberty. So this liberty is right in a larger, wider sense. That means I have the liberty to be a vegetarian or a non-vegetarian. I have a liberty to wear any shirt, like that. But at the same time, one has to understand that in an organized society, the liberty is limited. That is, you cannot have unrestricted freedom or liberty. When you want to have a full liberty, then one has to withdraw from the society and has to go to litigation and be a saint. But as long as you are within the society, your liberty and freedom is self-control is the only way, or otherwise society will impose on you. The state will impose on you. So no one can have unlimited freedom or unlimited liberty in an organized society. So in this way, rights and duties are mutually correlative. The best example you can refer to Article 19, 1 on the one hand and the class 2 to 6 on the other hand. Then Article 21, liberty. Now this liberty, as I said, it is not absolute. This is what sentence says. If liberty can be taken away, and liberty procedure established by law. One thing is you have a fair procedure, just, fair, and reasonable. In our constitution, in our legal system, we have not abolished the death sentence. Of course, Supreme Court by a judgment, it has mitigated. In mitigating circumstances, the life imprisonment being the normal rule, and death sentence has not been abolished. It is a rarest of rare cases which has been given. So you cannot have an absolute freedom or liberty in an organized society. So this is the basic concept on which you have a variety of rights and duties you find. And another important subject which we teach, from this you can understand about the concept of duty. That is, in England, they have developed the law of tort. What is this law of tort? Tort, in contrast to the law of contract. In the law of contract, you can easily understand two individuals entering a contract. And breach of contract, you seek a remedy in a court of law. But as far as the tort is concerned, there is no privity of party as in the law of contract, that every individual has got a duty towards public generally. And that duty, if you breach, then you are liable for it. It is a breach of duty primarily fixed by law. Such duties towards public generally, and is redressable in an action for unliquidated damages. So that is the law of tort subject, which many other than lawyers, even educated, this such a subject which we teach. Now the point I want to make you understand, this subject, law of tort, well developed in England. And India being under colonial rule of Britain, we have inherited most of the laws and legal system from Britain. And in fact, though they have done many things, good things they have done it, in that the Indian Penal Code being codified. But they didn't want to codify the civil laws. And the law of torts, of course, they wanted to codify it, and on the pattern of British law of torts. But it was a failure. They have prepared the bill, the civil wrong bill, and it was withdrawn. And they have judged the Indian citizens at that point of time itself, several years back. Why they withdrew the bill? That Indians have no civic sense. It is very, very difficult to implement the subject law of tort, because it is a duty oriented. Every citizen has got a duty towards others in all their public dealings. Suppose an individual says, I will walk on the middle of the road. Law expects you to walk only on the platform. Now that is an English proverb, your freedom ends another man's nose. You will have the freedom as long as it does not touch the other people. So when you want to walk at the middle of the road, then you are breaking the law. So you are expected to keep the left while driving, but you can't monopolize the entire road. So you have to use and others, or make others also to use it. So there is mutual rights and duties involving. But this subject law thought, except in Motor Vehicles Act and one or two other acts, we are following till today the British law thought on whatever the civil wrong which we do, we claim damages. We claim damages. So, had this law thought been developed in India, created a civic sense in the minds of our Indian people, then these duties, there is a chapter on duties, listing out a list of duties, is not at all necessary, because it is only afterthought. It is only an afterthought. They have, by 42nd Amendment, they have inducted a chapter 4A, fundamental duties. That chapter is not at all necessary had they developed the law thoughts in India, so that every individual citizen will have a civic sense of respecting others in all our public dealings. Because we don't bother about others. We are only bothered our own self-interest, personal interest dominating. And we are always claiming rights only. Of course, right should be there, and it is not, as I said, it is a broader meaning and narrow meaning you have, and we cannot claim rights alone. People always forget about their responsibility, their own duties. But that such type of that you can always see now what we are in the lockdown in India, or this pandemic where there is how much the police find it difficult in making the people to observe the norms of the lockdown. So the people has to voluntarily must develop the civic sense in their mutual dealings. So I can speak. I don't want to go to specific fundamental rights or fundamental duties. So these subjects, law subjects, which we always teach them with a lot of case laws and updates, and this brief basis of the fundamental rights and fundamental duties are very important. So I think you can carry with them that the rights and duties are mutually correlative. That is the first principle. Then right in the broader, wider sense, we call it as a liberty, and no one can have an absolute liberty, and this liberty is always restricted in an organized society. And of course, there are two theories, as I said, positivistic view and naturalistic view, that depends upon the democratic state or an authoritative state. And with this, I could conclude my interrelationship of rights and duties. And I thank the organizers for having given me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I would like to remind all the participants that in case they have any questions, please use the chat box to post them now. And after Sanjeev sir's address, we will take the questions one by one. So now we move on to the keynote address on fundamental duties to be delivered by Honorable Mr. Justice Sanjeev Kumar Panigrahi, Judge, High Court of Odisha. So, sir, I've already introduced about your professional background earlier, so everybody knows. So you can go ahead with the keynote address, please. You have to unmute, sir. So kindly unmute.
Thank you, Rishika. Thank you, Professor Yogesh sir, and Professor Sachidanand sir, and all Professor Arunal Lakshmi madam, and all the teachers who are present today. It is indeed a great privilege on my part to speak on something which is very not very much discussed in public life. We always discuss mostly in the right perspective, but duties are the least discussed areas. We always feel that our rights should be enforced, but we forget that duties are also equally important. They are like they should go together. It's a mutually exclusive. So enjoy your right and perform your duties. That is the slogan. So we should enjoy right, at the same time we should perform our duties. If rights are not duties and rights are, they don't go together, there will be problem. There will be chaos in the society, which we see today. So the duty towards the state, duty towards the fellow being, duty towards your environment, duty towards your around the surroundings. So we have to inculcate the values of duties in the citizens, and towards that purpose, the fundamental duties have been introduced in the Constitution. In fact, there is the mutual exclusivity of the duty and rights are very much there during the freedom struggle. Freedom struggle, in fact, at that time, though there was more focus on the duty part, but sorry, the rights part, because we were under a colonial regime, and under that regime, we used to have, we used to emphasize and fight it for our rights. Duty was, of course, they were very strongly there at that time. And because of that, you see there is a lot of sacrifices by the people at that time, and to get the cherished freedom in the country. So I just want to quote Mahatma Gandhi on this issue. The true source of right is duty, and if we all discharge our right will not be far to seek. If leaving duty unperformed, we run after rights, they will escape us like will the beast. The more we pursue them, the farther they will fly. This is what Mahatma Gandhi says on the aspect of rights and duties. The framers of our Constitution had imposed a heavy responsibility on the state to guarantee rights and create a proper condition for their enjoyment by the citizens. To balance these obligations of the state towards the citizens and certain obligation of citizens towards their country, we have brought these fundamental duties. It was not felt. Why, sometimes question asks, why that fundamental duty was not felt during the framing of the process of the Constitution? Maybe at that time we are more focusing on rights because we are under the colonial legacy. So during the colonial regime, we had to fight for our rights. At that time, perhaps we have forgotten our duty to include that fundamental duties in the Constitution. Though later good sense prevailed and we have included. All the duties may be called the 10 commandments of our Constitution. Article 51A, which was included later, which are incorporated later, which defines fundamental duties, and they are given from 51A to K. These duties include what? The duties include to cherish the noble ideals of a national struggle for freedom. During that struggle of freedom, there are ideals. There are some noble ideals which the freedom fighters followed, and that is perhaps missing today. Perhaps at the time of incorporating the fundamental duties, that part perhaps it was seen to be missing, and because of that, I think this fundamental duties were thought to be included in our Constitution. Then to protect the sovereignty and integrity of India, that is always the most important duty of every citizen. We should not do something which will hamper our sovereignty, which will hamper our integrity. So since we have a diverse society, we have a diverse culture, we have a diverse linguistic, ethnic background, so many things. So integrity of the country is the most important to bring about the integrity of the country, the most important aspect that every citizen should cherish. Then to defend the country, in the time of need, every citizen should be united to defend the country. So that is also a very important duty. It is, though it is not required to be told, but to emphasize it, our legislatures, they've included it. Then to promote the harmony and spirit of common brotherhood, to value and preserve the rich heritage of our culture. We're always proud of our cultural heritage. We're always proud of our cultural ethos. So all these things are there in our life, but by including this in our constitution, we have tried to just re-emphasize on this issue, to protect and improve the natural environment. Protection of natural environment, that is imbibed by every citizen, but unfortunately we don't bother to destroy them. So perhaps the way we are destroying our environment, the way we are damaging our environment, maybe because of that, the constitution makers, later the lawmakers, they thought it should be included in our fundamental duty. Then, as Yogesh sir was aptly told about, he was telling about the scientific temper. We have developed a lot. We have in science and technology. We have achieved a lot in this front, but unfortunately, the scientific temper is still lacking. We are just, you see, in pandemic period, what we are doing. We're going to just the roof of every house, and you used to have all these nonsensical things we are doing. Is it scientific temper? This is the way the coronavirus goes. So these are all dogmatic thought. This is very this is totally against the scientific temper that our constitution makers thought about, our lawmakers thought about. Is to safeguard the public property. So during the strike and all these things, you know how we are destroying the public property. Even otherwise also, we don't bother about destroying public property. To strive for excellence in opportunity for education of the children. So these are some of the fundamentals which we call the 10 commandments. So the fundamental duties. So these duties were, though not there in 1949, later it was thought right to be included. And so in the 42nd Amendment in 1976, and after the recommendation on the recommendation of Shwaran Singh Committee, as you know, most of us that we know, the committee suggested that this step needed to be taken to ensure that individual did not overlook his duties while exercising fundamental rights. Because since duties and rights goes together, so individual cannot overlook his duties. Only we seek right, that is not sufficient. We need to also perform our duties. So that's why in 42nd Amendment, in chapter 4A, which consists of only Article 51A, was added, and as 10 fundamental duties have been added. Fundamental duties are intended to serve a constant reminder to the citizen. Mr. Citizen, you see, these are the duties and you have to perform your duty. Only seeking right is not enough. Professor Sachidanand and Professor Yogesh sir, they have told a lot about the rights and duties and how they are correlated, how they are, just come in conflict. So I'm not going to deal with all those things, just simply because you are all teachers, so you know it's a lot of things. I will just try to go into some of the how the Supreme Court and High Courts have dealt with certain issues with respect to the fundamental duties that I'll go. So basically, this our democratic behavior, what we talk about the duties means that is also part of our democratic behavior. The democratic behavior that always respect duties and rights. I mean, they respect the coexistence of duties and rights. So that is really our democratic behavior. Unfortunately, that democratic behavior is diminishing day by day because of many factors. So this duty, the fundamental duties that is in our constitution, it is in line with 29(1) of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. As the students of human rights, you must have seen that. So with this provision, modern constitution, many countries they have included. We have brought it from Russia. or that you know, just I'm not going to too much of that, because so the another important aspect of the duty is that it is basically the bedrock principle of the fundamental duty, that we must respect our tradition, our mythology, our religion, our practices, our culture, our so these are the bedrock principle that is upon which the fundamental duties have been uh, that has been devised and codified later. So originally fundamental duties were that is uh, we have not there, but if fundamental rights are there, that I have already told you. But later we have thought, because of our lack of values, we have how the society started diminishing in different spheres, how our education was required to be uplifted, how the poverty and corruption, everything need to be tackled properly. So to tackle all these things, the duties part is also it should be given importance, because fundamental duties are not enforceable in law. That is how our speakers have they have told you. But nowadays, many duties are also treated as a fundamental. They are taken together, and while the code, while interpreting many aspects of the duties, the code also, though it is not enforceable, but code enforces in a different way. So it is a tremendous task to inculcate the values of the fundamental duties in the country, because this is every school, college, everywhere. We know about our rights, but unfortunately the duties are less talked about subject. So we need to talk more and more about our fundamental duties also. There is no specific article on the enforcement of fundamental duties, but the various constitutional courts have tried to enforce them in a different way. For example, right to have a safe environment, a clean environment, is the fundamental rights of a citizen. There is no such fundamental right to clean environment, but right to life is a fundamental right, because right to life comes from right to the clean right to life comes from right to have a clean environment. That's why that comes under right to life. The same way, right, fundamental, it is the duty of the state to protect the environment. If people are not protecting the environment in the country, then it is the duty of the court to enforce the environment. In that way, constitutional courts have enforced the fundamental duties directly or indirectly. So the Supreme Court, I will go to certain aspects of the judicial pronouncement on different issues, just a short snapshot, I would say. In 51A, small a, interesting and well known, in the case of Bijan Emmanuel, you know, there was a famous case of national anthem case. The question which came up before the court was whether non-joining in singing national anthem is disrespect to the song. That was the question before the court. So the facts of the case were that the three children who were appellants in this particular case belonged to a different religion. They belonged to a different religion. They attended the school, and when the national anthem was sung, they used to stand in respect of anthem but did not sing. They used to they respected the national anthem but didn't sing. They did not used to sing the anthem because, as per them, the religious did not allow them to sing. The headmistress of the school had, however, expelled them from school on the ground of not singing the national anthem. The children then approached the High Court through writ. The High Court had dismissed their petition and held that there was nothing in the national anthem which would offend anyone's religious belief. However, later, that was the final verdict of the court, but later, recently in the Shyamnaran Choke case, Supreme Court erred in making the playing of national anthem compulsory in the cinema halls. That was very controversial. Yogesh sir must be knowing that. The very controversial judgment there. This led to vigilantism and unintended consequences of the court in going to step ahead to enforce the fundamental duties. Moreover, in enforcing these duties, for us, as an unintended consequences, the court even led to unreasonably restricting the fundamental rights of citizens. Later, the court rectified, of course. That was after in the review. So, in the similar way, I will say in MC Mehta versus Kamal Nath, a few just I am giving some. There are many cases, just some snapshots of some of the cases. The Supreme Court had reiterated the importance of preservation of our natural environment and held that one of the fundamental duties of citizen is to that is set out in Article 51 to protect and improve the natural environment, including forest, lakes, rivers, and wildlife. Rishika ma'am, you must be interested in this because I'm told she teaches environmental law. So it was further held that Article 48A and 51AG should be interpreted in the light of 21 of the Constitution. So very often, though it is not enforceable, fundamental duties are not enforceable, but reading together along with Article 21, it is made enforceable. So totally you can't say it is not enforceable. It is enforceable through a different, with the help of this Article 21. There is fundamental right to life. So the Constitution, any disturbance of the rudimentary environment components, that is air, water, and soil, that are essential for life could be perilous to life. Hence, that can be enforced. Similarly, another important case in the Rajasthan High Court, in L.K. Kulwal versus State of Rajasthan, where the Honorable High Court had interpreted Article 51A and held that Article 51A can normally be called as citizen's duty, but in reality it confers a right upon the citizens approach the court to ensure that state performs its duty faithfully. Here the court once again misinterpreted the duties by regarding them as duty of the state. So very often what we have seen, various high courts have interpreted their duties as the duty of the state. No, it is duty of the citizen. Unfortunately, most of the time, many of our high courts, they interpret that they are duty of the state. Similarly, the Ramlila Maidan incident in 2012, Article 51A, which deals with the fundamental duties of the citizen, it inter alia postulates that it shall be the duty of every citizen of India to abide by the Constitution, to promote harmony and the spirit of common brotherhood, to safeguard public property and abjure violence. So in this case also this part 3 and part 4 was read together and interpreted. So it is necessary to clear that the meaning of fundamental using the expression, this is fundamental in the governance of the state. Fundamental means fundamental in the governance of the state, to describe the directive principles which have not legally been made enforceable. Thus, the word fundamental has been used in two different senses under our Constitution. The essential character of fundamental rights is secured by limiting the legislative power and by providing that any transgression of the limitation would render the offending law pretendo void. So this is how the court has dealt with that issue. So the duty may be a direct or indirect consequence of a fair assertion of the right. I repeat, duty may be a direct or indirect consequence of a fair assertion of a right. So this is how that was held in this case, Ramlila Maidan case. Then the parliament has realized the importance of the duties and they have included duties in it. But most of the duties, as we have seen, while there is so enforcing the fundamental rights, so duties and fundamental rights are just taken together, and most of them are enforced through Article 21. So Article 21 is the you can say is the mode through which the fundamental duties are often enforced. Then in India, Union of India versus Naveen Jindal case, about that respecting national flag after that flag code was framed. So these are so every citizen has to respect the national flag, and there are certain code flag code has been there. So you have to respect those codes and you have to follow those codes while dealing with the national flag, whether while just unfolding it or while just while you deal with the national flag issue. So can't fold in this way, can't fold in that way. It can't be through this color should be on the top, that color should be on the. Everything is there in that code. So therefore, the position of law remains that the directive principles and the fundamental duties cannot in themselves serve to invalidate a legislation or a policy. And these fundamental duties and directive principles both are also they form the basics of many legislations. Then AIMS students versus union, students union versus AIMS. That is another case. So India at that time, this case also deals with the fundamental duties came to be incorporated in that is under 51A. In that case, it is said every citizen of India is fundamentally obliged to develop a scientific temper and humanism. So as I was talking about earlier, there was a scientific temper. So the scientific temper has to be developed, and that is a duty, and it is the state also does its best to promote the scientific temper, but unfortunately there are many aspects, many things that still dominates, and that comes in the way of developing our scientific temper. Then case of state of Gujarat versus Mirzapur Moti Qureshi Kasab Jamaat. It is in 2005. In this case, Article 48A, which deals with environment, forest, and wildlife. These three subjects have been dealt with in one article for a simple reason that three are interrelated. Protection and improvement of environment is necessary for the safeguarding of forest and wildlife, which in turn protect and improve the environment. Forest and wildlife are clearly interrelated and interdependent, and it is the duty of every individual to protect the forest and wildlife. That is also, so Supreme Court has very in clearer terms has talks about the interrelatedness of forest and environment and our duty. Then in another case of Mirzapur Moti Qureshi Kesar Jamaat. So here it says organization of agriculture and animal husbandry. That is also a very important fundamental duty of the citizens. But that is to be done in a scientific lines. In that case, it says you organize it, but share those traditional methods. Rather, you go for scientific lines, and you can have a better agriculture, better your even for having a better breed of animal. So in case of milking cow, you have better breed so that you can get more milk. Better in case of better implements, you can have more better harvesting. So in that way, the Supreme Court has emphasized on that aspect also. So that also part of the scientific temper. Then another case that is Of course, case law must be very, very boring. So, being a judge, I should focus on that. Other aspects, everybody has. I mean, you have studied in your law classes, but it is my duty to just slightly emphasis on the case law, because the case law is the most boring aspect I know. Except lawyers, nobody likes case law. Lawyers also, except outside courtroom, they don't like case law. Case law are so boring. So the government decision to give utmost importance to a training program of the Indian Administrative Service Selectee was upheld by deriving support from 51. Even that is also there. So it is the duty of the government for giving better training to IAS selectee is also part of the fundamental duty. 51AJ. This has been clearly enunciated in Mohan Kumar Singhania versus Union of India. So that is also part of the fundamental duty. In yet another case, State of Uttar Pradesh versus Yamuna Shankar Misra, the court interpreted the object of writing confidential reports and making entries in the character rules by deriving support from Article 51A. Even writing confidential report is also part of 51AJ, which enjoins upon every citizen that the primary duty is to constantly endeavor to strive towards excellence. Whenever your confidential report is written, as most of you are working in government setup or maybe in some other setups, you have the duty to get the report from the authority, so that if there is something wrong, your suppose the CCR valuation is lacking somewhere, so you can always point out, and also you can improve in future. So you have the duty to ask for the confidential report also from the department. Though most of the department, they don't know that. They don't deny to our employees. So that is also fundamental duty. Seeking this thing from the authority. Then in rural litigation and entitlement Kendra versus state of UP, there's a complete vein and mining operation carried out in Mussoorie Hills was held to be sustainable by deriving support from fundamental duty as enshrined in Article 51AG. The court held that preservation of the environment and keeping the ecological balance unaffected is a task which not only the government but also every citizen must undertake. It is a social obligation of the state as well as individuals to protect the environment. Then in TN Godavarman, everybody knows this is a continuous mandamus that is still, it is in Supreme Court, that is and every environmental matter is under that case. So that also laid down a foundation of environmental jurisprudence in the country, and it talks about environmental protection that also flows from this 51A. So in that, in a case that is in 2002, it says, today the state and citizens are under a fundamental obligation to protect and improve the environment, including forest, lakes, rivers, wildlife, and to have compassion for living creatures. So this is what, this is also our fundamental duty, to love forest, lakes, rivers, wildlife, and have compassion towards the living creature. That is also our fundamental duties. That most of we have that. Why this constitution? Why our lawmakers thought that this should be included? Many of us ask this question, and there is a debate on this issue also. We know our duties, but unfortunately, just to remind the citizens of their duties, this has been included. Nothing else. That was the main purpose. Otherwise, everybody knows it, that this is our duty. Thus, it is clear that the question whether constitutional validity, a statutory provision or executive act, or testing the reasonableness of any restriction passed by law on the exercise of any fundamental right by a regulation, control, prohibition, the directive principle of state policy and fundamental duties as enshrined in Article 51A of the Constitution play a very, very significant role. That is decided in Qureshi, 1958. It's a very long, it's an old case. Then in Mohan Kumar Singhania, so the Supreme Court used it as an external aid for interpretation of Constitution. Supreme Court has taken it as an aid, fundamental duty as an aid while interpreting Article 51A
and many of the rights. So in many cases, Supreme Court has taken these 10 commandments as guiding principle while deciding the rights cases. So this is how there are so many cases on the issue of fundamental duties. The position of law remains that directive principle and fundamental duties cannot in themselves serve to individuate a legislation or a policy, but it does guide the state to frame a particular policy. So we as a nation and a society stand badly divided than before. Our many issues, we have the narrow mindset like casteism, communalism, corruption, and so many maladies that is afflicting our society. Those can be overcome by giving more importance to our fundamental duties. And fundamental duties, it is really fundamental, and duties and rights are mutually exclusive. This is what the code has held, and also most of our speakers has held. I also feel this is the bedrock principle. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any teachers having any questions? All right. Then we will move on now to Dr. Aruna Shrivastava, Chairman Coordination of Academics at National University, Odisha, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Rishika. A very good afternoon to all the dignitaries who have participated in this teachers training program, and to all the participants. We acknowledge your participation in this program. Now, my role is to propose a vote of thanks, but however, I would like to begin with Abdul Kalam's quote, where he says, "Teaching is a very noble profession that shapes the character, caliber, and future of an individual. If people remember me as a good teacher, that will be the biggest honor for me." As we all sail in this same profession, indeed we are fortunate to be the teachers who will be molding the students in their development and also their character, bringing them to be the future citizens of India. Now, in this particular session, we have witnessed to the significance on the fundamental duties that has been deliberated by our keynote speaker, Sanjay Kumar Panigrahi, Justice, Odisha High Court, where he has focused and impressed upon the importance of the duty of a citizen to the state, duty of the citizen to the fellow beings, and how the directive principles of state policy and the fundamental rights form the basis of any kind of legislations. And he touched upon how the fundamental duties are highlighted while interpreting Article 21 of the Constitution, and he has also focused mainly on some of the most important landmark judgments, the case and the Ram Leela case and many other aspects where he said duty may be direct or indirectly, it is essential to a right. And similarly, Professor Sachidanandam sir, who has focused on the interface of the rights and duties, has dealt with the fact that rights and duties are correlative in nature. One cannot exist without the other. And he has also deliberated on the theory of positivism and how the relationship of rights and duties is very important in the human relationships. And he dwelt on the right in a wider sense, and also touched upon stating that no one can have a liberty absolutely. It is subject to certain restrictions. And I move on to the Vice Chancellor's address, where he highlighted on the philosophy of the fundamental duties and the importance to respect the national flag, respect the national anthem, and render community service or the national service. And why this Article 51A has been brought into the Constitution subsequently, and the common brotherhood which it touches upon. And he also dwelt on some of the important laws that invoke these fundamental duties. Now, as we need to close the session, I have only few things to sensitize ourselves before we close. As I said, these fundamental duties have a greater importance because these reflect the basic values like patriotism, nationalism, humanism, environmentalism, harmonious living, gender equality, scientific temper and inquiry, and individual and collective excellence, which are very essential to develop in a child. Particularly teachers, because after +2, they come to the college level, but the most impressionable age is only in your hands. Therefore, they need to be taught to respect, to cherish, to preserve, to promote harmony, peace, unity, and most importantly, let the child be appraised to renounce practices derogatory to the dignity of women. And they need to be appraised of to establish a democratic balance by making people conscious of their duties as they are equally conscious of their rights, because they are not aloof from society. We know that children are living from the hi-fi backgrounds. They are with us. But let the child be taught that they are part of the community, that they are part of the common brotherhood. Therefore, let them perform their duties righteously so that the child will become a better citizen for tomorrow. And we also have seen that the educating the child is also brought under the purview of the fundamental duty, and it's the parents' responsibility to see that a child is to be educated. And in that, there were certain recommendations where Justice Verma committee has made a recommendation with regard to bringing another duties also into it, like duty to vote to elections, duty to pay taxes, duty to foster family values and responsible parenthood, and duty of industrial organizations to provide education to children of their employees. So, with these few words, we hope let us all spare little more time out of our time and see that one child that is brought responsibly is going to contribute for the betterment of the country. That is why Abdul Kalam once again said, if you salute your duty, you no need to salute anybody. If you pollute your duty, you have to salute everybody. Let us all pledge on this very occasion to see that we contribute from our end as teachers to bring up, rear up a child as a better citizen and give him to the country to lead the country. On behalf of National Law University Odisha, I thank once again the organizers. Firstly, the keynote speaker Sanjeev Kumar Panigrahi ji, Justice, Odisha High Court, our Vice Chancellor Yogesh Pratap Singh, and Professor Sachidanandam sir, and Owais Khan and Rishika Kare, and mostly to all the participants once again for having participated in this teachers training program. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for wonderfully summing up the webinar and filtering out the message. To all the participants, we will be circulating the certificates within a week via email. And again, on behalf of National Law University Odisha, thank you everybody for joining.
Thank you, Rishika, and thank you, Owais, for making all efforts to organize this training program. Thank you, Panigrahi sir, for joining this event, and big thank you to all the teachers from different schools of Cuttack and Bhubaneswar for joining this event. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.